What's up, everybody? Is your guy Tyler here with Mom's Basement MMA, and it's not every day that I get an opportunity like I'm getting today to talk to a very special man, somebody that just kind of reminds me that the mistakes I've made in my past, the dumb decisions I've made, I can overcome that, and they don't define the type of man or the type of person that I am today, and that I can accomplish all things if I want it bad enough. That is who my next guest. He embodies that. He is probably best known as being the founder for the Lamb Striking Academy. You may know him from being a professional mixed martial artist or professional boxer, but he is also a mixed martial arts coach, an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and so many other titles. Join me if you're watching this, just clapping your car. It's cool. Please join me in welcoming Coach Durwyn Lamb. Coach D, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing well, man. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
I just want to tell you, Coach D, that I look at all the different hats that you've worn in your life, and pun not intended, and I'm amazed. I don't know how I'm talking to you. I don't know how you're alive. I don't know how you're not incarcerated. People don't live your life. Like, people just, like, your story defies odds. And it should be a movie of sorts. Like, they could, like, make a movie about you. That's how special of a person you are. I'm just really kind of blown away. And one of the things that we talked a little bit about before we hit the record button is we were talking about some of the things that you got going on. One of the things that you told me is you're working on a book. So what I said about you being a movie, well, maybe it will eventually be a movie, but for now
Yeah.
we're gonna do a book about it. Tell me about what that process has been like. Tell me about your book.
Um, well, for years now, people been as long as I've been having Facebook, people been years telling me I need to write a book, I need to write a book, I need to write a book. It's just all about time and I'm gonna write a couple of books, but this particular book, I decided it's gonna be about combat sports, my journey in combat sports and coaching. And what I went through as a coach, as a man, all these things. So it doesn't just necessarily talk about my journey as a coach. It talks about my journey and my trials and tribulations as a man and what I went through personally to really like a lot of people don't know a lot of coaches' stories and what they go through. People talk about fighters a lot. They talk about them, but they don't talk about the guys that really got them showed them love and got them to where they was. Not only did that, but also the journey that they had in their own life. Because a lot of coaches are fathers, husbands, and they have other as you said, they wear other hats as
Right.
well. And so people don't know because a lot of coaches don't talk about what they deal with personally and the stuff they went through in their life to become the man that they are. And so I want to touch on that and I want to make sure that a lot of coaches that are struggling and hurting that they're not speaking and talking when they read my book, that they be inspired and be encouraged to know that everything that they did not go unwarranted and everything they went through, and they're not the only ones that went through the things that they went through. So that's what that book is pretty much going to be about.
And the other thing that I think is notable is you're coaching at the highest levels of mixed martial arts, but at the end of the day, we're talking about the fight business.
Yeah.
And the longer I do this show, the more people I talk to, the more perspectives I get. I have a much larger appreciation for the people that are able to do this in whatever capacity. If you're a coach, if you're a
Uh,
fighter, if you commentate fights, even, or if you have a successful promotion, it is so difficult. Like, the red tape, the bureaucracy, the politics. There's a lot of shady characters out there, and
yeah.
they are just
More,
ready and waiting for you to
yeah.
show up, and they want to just squeeze you for everything that you have. And one of the things I really wanted to hit on, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, and anyone listening to this, they already know. Like, listen, the fight business has that kind of, like, reputation.
Yeah.
How do you
for sure.
protect your guys from that, from those carps and opportunists out there?
Well, here's the thing I learned a long time ago. A person's gonna be who they're gonna be, right? A man's gonna be a man, a woman's gonna be a woman. What I do is I just give them the knowledge and wisdom and understanding about life, period. So
Right.
that means you can take what I tell you and apply it to the fight game, to your regular life, to everyday thing you do. So the main thing I try to instill into people, young people, is the being awake in the spirit of understanding and having loyalty and spiritual love in your heart, and to not sell your soul, to not be impulsive, to not do things because it looks good or you think it feels good, to always think before you act and speak, and before you have any actions of anything, to always think before you do all those things, and make sure you do everything with a pure heart, meaning that you're not going to be perfect, but just make sure that everything you do with the good intent of your heart. And that's the biggest thing that I try to still inside of my fighters, or the people that I talk, young people that I speak to, is teaching them how to deal with themselves. And when you teach them how to deal with themselves and find themselves and love themselves, then they'll be able to treat other people right or do things right by people. But everybody's not, let's keep it real. I've been coaching for almost 20 years. Everybody's not going to do the right thing. Everybody's not,
Right.
some people are going to leave and they got to leave so they can find themselves. And sometimes they come back. You know, everybody's not going to do right. That's the main thing. But I will tell everybody the same thing, but don't mean that everybody's going to do right. Most of the time they do, but not all the time they don't. It's a fight
Here's
game.
the knowledge. You have to apply it. Like, I can't do
It's
that for
simple.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's simple.
One of the things that like I kind of think about. Obviously, I'm not an athlete. I'm not a coach. I'm not a fighter. Never have been. Never will be any of those things. But I guess this is the one parallel that I have in my life is I was in the military for a few years. The 2007 2008 financial meltdown happens. I end up getting out of the military, and it's one of those things where it's like I have a daughter to support. I had just gone through a divorce. I had a bunch of personal things going on. I'm just trying to keep food in her belly and a roof over her head. That's it. And I struggled, man. Like I was eating ramen noodles or beans out of a can, doing what I had to do to survive. And I was in sales. And the one thing I'll tell you about working in sales is you're as good as your last month. That's the only thing people care about. Like they don't care about the stuff I'm going through in my personal life. They don't care that I'm running low on diapers. They don't care that I have all these bills that are stacking up. They don't care that my paycheck doesn't cover all of those bills, and I have to pick and choose what the hell I'm going to do. And, am I going to be hungry or am I going to get medicine for my daughter's earache? I'll be hungry then. Like, that's how bad it was. People don't really
Yeah,
know that. And I
yeah,
talk about all that because, like, in the fight business, it's very much like that. You are a
it is.
salesman of sorts, and you are only as good as your last fight. And some of these guys, for better or for worse, I don't think the younger guys really, not all, but I think there's some guys that they get hot, they're used to people treating them a certain way,
Hmm.
and then when things don't work out, they take that first loss or they take a couple in a row. Now all of a sudden, like, I'm not gonna say people are gonna throw shade at them, but they become yesterday's news, and I'm sure you've encountered that time
All
and
the
time
time,
again.
over and over.
And what do you kind of tell those guys? Like, obviously, there's a life lesson there. Is that one of those things like when that situation does unfold, it's like I don't know if I told you so is the right word, but it's like that's a very humbling moment, and I don't think me as a young man, unless I encountered and personally dealt with all those hardships that I went through, I don't think I would have listened to you. Like if you told me, like in a professional setting, like Tyler, like it'll be fine. Like you need to do A, B, and C. I would probably look at you and be like, I know this, man. I'm good. I already know all my shit. And then afterward, like when I'm going through it, I'd run over to you and be like, oh shit, what am I doing? So are those types of situations commonplace? Is that something
Yeah,
that you've had to deal with in your capacity as a coach all the time?
it happens more than not. Happens more than it doesn't. So most people go through that, and most people do it. And all I can say is that I'm gonna continue to stand on what I stand on, meaning I'm not going to waver because I'm just gonna speak the same speech each fighter, each person.
Right.
I mean, I've seen this, and you can imagine how many times I've seen this over and over again. How many times I've had to talk to these guys, each one about the same thing over and over again. It's a new fighter, but the same story.
Right.
And it's happened to a couple of guys that I've trained that was in a big show that end up um, not getting cut and things like that. And them have sometimes people just gonna have to go through it themselves,
Mm-hmm.
because that the biggest lessons of life is actually having to go through it,
Right.
because I was younger before, and some people would tell me certain things, and I'm like, it's just one time for me to hear it, and then I have to go through the trials and tribulation. And it was like, dang, you bump your head hard enough and long enough, you'll stop wanting to bump your head, and then you'll start to fix it. Either you will or you won't, but most of these people are gonna have to learn the hard way. I try to tell them they don't have to if they just
Mm-hmm.
listen, but when for the most part they're gonna learn the hard way because um, it's what we call like
Do you think
the
it's
brain,
ego or youth or a combination of both?
combination of both in the undeveloped brain.
Mm.
Okay, so it's the brain and the mind is and the personality and the spirit is still maturing and
Mm-hmm.
it's still developing. And so you have to go through these things. If you're doing the same things in your 40s than you were doing in your 20s, and that's a problem, right? But
Very
these
much
kids,
so.
teenagers, 20s, they bump their head a lot because as a lot of us did. And so what I do is just plant a seed, right? So the main thing is planting a seed. So when you plant the seed and you tell them the things, that seed eventually will grow and they'll come back. Most of the people that I've talked to, they always come back and be like, man, you was right.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you was right. Or I should have listened. And I just say maybe one time for you to listen. But a lot of those guys have changed. So it did work because even though they took the hard way out, they did come back and regroup and reprocess everything, and then let those seeds start growing. Then a lot of them start changing their lives.
One of the things that you hit on that just kind of I thought about, and I never paid too much attention to it as a young guy. Shocker of all shockers, but like being young doesn't last forever. It doesn't. I promise you. Like I was a young guy once. I was 20 years old once. I was 22 years old once. Um, and one day you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be 37 years old like me with a mortgage and two kids, and like I'm on a different trajectory in life now. Like, not to say it's a bad thing, but like as you age, like different windows of opportunity show up while others close, and that's just life in general. Like you can't do everything all at once. Like me going to medical school to be a doctor, how realistic is that at my age, at 38 years old? I guess I could if I really wanted to, if I wanted it bad enough. Sure, I guess I could, but how realistic is that with two kids, a mortgage, a wife I gotta support? Like, how realistic is that? To go through 12, 15 years of school to do something like that, and
Right,
then I can be a doctor when I'm in my 50s, mid
right,
50s, and then what? Like, what I'm trying to say is we have one life, and your youth doesn't last forever. Like your tomorrows are never guaranteed, and one day you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be like, oh shit, I'm old.
mm-hmm.
This stuff does
Absolutely.
not last forever. Like this fighting stuff does not last forever, and it feels like it. Like you're 22, 23 years old, you're on top of the world. You don't know about what injuries are like, you don't know what rehab's like, because you take a weekend, you heal, you recuperate, and you're back to normal on Monday. But I promise you, as you get older, your body is not going to function that way. Like this is a temporary thing.
Right.
And do you have those conversations, Coach D, with those guys? Like, hey, like, have you thought about like what you're going to do when this is over? This is a
Yeah,
temporary
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah, that's the main thing I talk about. I mean, I spend before we even work out. After I spend 30 minutes every class talking about life and getting them to process and understand that. And I tell them, be honest with them, like, look, let's be real. A lot of you aren't going to make it as fighters.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you which one of y'all that is because I can't tell you that, but you'll figure it out. But the main thing is, if the ones, even if you don't make it as a fighter, if you make it in life, then that's the ultimate victory anyway. That's the main
Right.
victory anyway. It's making it in life. I mean, making it as a fighter is the icing on the cake, but to
Sure.
be able to be successful in your spirit, in your personal life, in your financial life, that's the main goal more than anything, you know. And for the ones that are going to make it, make sure that you set up yourself and, you know, because you can't fight forever. So make sure that, you know, you maybe even invest in some
Mm-hmm.
business. And now what they got now, the Bitcoin, crypto, all that stuff, start setting money and building stuff up and setting stuff aside, but start planning at least
Right.
how you're going to do this stuff because, you know, it don't last forever. And, you know, God forbid, even if you get injured or something happens to where you can't fight no more, or you get cut from the UFC, whatever the case may be, at
Right.
least have another plan, which should be your first plan. You know, shouldn't be
Absolutely.
no plan B. The plan B, I don't believe in that. That it's just have a life, have a plan for your life.
Right.
You know, and there won't be and in that plan, whatever you're doing now is a part of that plan. Whatever you're doing in the future is a part of that plan, and whatever you're doing in the present is a part of that plan. And just know that let life and nature take its course, but just know that, you know, have a plan in your mind of what you're going to be doing, you know, for you know, now, present, and future.
I want to kind of take a step back and, and frame it in a way for people who don't know your story, for people who don't know who you are. Like what you're saying, like there's always what's the right word I'm looking for? There's always that sniff test, right? When you're a young guy or any person, regardless of age, I guess. There's always that sniff test. Like, who's telling me this? Why should I listen to them? First question, right? Um, and you have the credentials, you have the life experience, and you have a story that's very unique. You've walked the walk, you've made mistakes, and like where you are today should not happen. Like it shouldn't. So I kind of want to take a step back and ask you about growing up. You've talked about you came up from the streets and it was kind of like a boys in the hood kind of life that you lived when you were a young man. So can you talk a little bit about what that life was like and when did you hit that rock bottom point where you're like, I got to get the hell out of this. I got to do something different.
Mhm. So I come from good people, right? So I do come from good people, and I come from people that actually love me and stuff like that. So um, I was just a lost kid. So at the end of the day, just like a lot of young men, uh, the street life was something that I chose. So it was something that I chose. Just like a lot of kids, you know, a lot of us don't have to do it, but we choose it because some of us don't have other things to do. Like
Right.
for me, I wasn't interested in uh, video games. I didn't wasn't interested in all that stuff. So they say the idle mind is the devil's playground. So what it did was it just made me like be interested in other things, which not knowing back then that it was gonna lead up to bigger things, you know, little stuff there, stealing, smoking, stealing bikes, stealing from the store, smoking, hanging out with the local crew and the thugs and stuff like that. It develops this kind of personality,
Right.
and then you become this character and this person and this thing. And that's really what happened to me. You know, like um, my interest in not wanting to do other things led my interest to wanting to hang out with the guys that was doing the wrong things. I was more intrigued by the wrong things and stuff like that, not knowing that later on it would cause for bigger things like that to happen. So, yeah, you know, my mom wasn't no thug, my dad wasn't no thug, nothing like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it was just my people was
Right.
my cousins, my family, my uncle. It was the people that I was around that caused me to be hanging out and doing these kind of things that I was doing, what eventually led to me being involved with gang affiliated, gang affiliation, and these kind of things, and then narcotics and street crimes and stuff like that. Um, that I went in for a long run for a while. Um, what happened was I knew even back then that it really wasn't the right thing to do, right?
Right.
So it's just I got caught up and I got in it everything. went on a spiral. It just went fast. I went from just wanting to be cool, because that's what happens. See,
Yeah.
this is what the people don't tell you. That all these street dudes don't tell you. That everybody's trying to survive, and everybody's trying to be a part of something, so they can feel protected. Everybody acts tough so they can feel protected or feel like they're surviving, because it's a survival tactic. Link up with this clique, link up with this group, act this way, portray this, and then I could be protected. So that's what was going on. But then when you're a child, you're an adolescent, the consequences ain't that bad. The older you get, the bigger the consequences. And so that's when the things start getting live, to the point where my life was in danger a lot, because of the situations I was around, the people I was around, the people I was hanging out with, and the affiliation that I was a part of made me get into some things that almost cost me my freedom and almost cost me my life. And it was just not having a plan. So it goes back to that, not knowing what I was going to do, not knowing what I wanted to do, and just kind of walking around life freestyling, trying to figure out what was going on. And I had more time to do stuff that I didn't need to be doing. And too many close calls, too many close situations with near-death experiences, and life in prison experiences, to where it could have did that for me, made me say, man, I can't do this.
Right.
Well, it really was when my son was born, is when my mind was like, oh, look, okay, we got to do something different, because, I got him now, and I'm over here thinking like, I can't do this forever.
Right.
So I had to start trying to figure things out. And that's when I started getting back into martial arts. So I started martial arts as a young kid, and then got away from it for a while, and got back into it there in my 20s. So that's what happened, was my change. The start of the change was my son being born, and then I got married. I'm not married no more, but I got married, and that moving from Fort Worth to Carrollton with my ex-wife kind of got me away from the clique and the crew that I was hanging out with.
Right.
And then that's when I started doing the martial arts and stuff like that. So it was really my son, and then the martial arts.
Was the Coach, was martial arts a outlet for you, or like was your game plan, like after your son was born, was it like, no, like I can have a career doing this, I could be a professional, I'm that good enough? Or was it just a way to hit the bags and blow off steam so you don't get in trouble?
Yeah, I wanted to fight.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fight again, and I was young and wanted to get back into it, but never in a million years that I thought that I was going to end up coaching. If somebody would have told me 25 years ago that I was going to be a coach or putting people in the UFC or doing that, I would have laughed. I thought my life was going to be something different, probably more entertainment field. I thought I was going to go do some entertainment stuff in the entertainment world, or just be in the streets. And I didn't know that it was going to lead up to doing this. And coaching came about because I started coaching my stepson, my ex-wife's son. He's 27 now. I started coaching him, and I started coaching her, who's a professional boxer.
Cool.
And started training her, and we all started fighting. And that's how it started. But I think everybody that knows me knew that at some point I was going to be some type of leader, type of leader of sort. Everybody saw that in me as a child and as a kid. They saw that. People would say those things to me. I just didn't know it was going to end up being like this. So it was, I believe, I credit that to my spiritual belief, that I believe it was God that came into my life, and he directed this play in this for me. And that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing now, which coaching has opened up the doors for me to do public speaking and do all the things that I'm doing now.
Before you were a coach, I know you boxed a little bit. I know that you competed as a mixed martial artist. Even at a relatively young age, what made you start focusing in on the coaching aspect as opposed to being a competitor yourself?
Back then, there were sanctioned bouts, right? I had a lot of those, but back then, and people that was old school kickboxers like myself, they'll tell you, like, back then, before they had the Google search, the Tapology, and all that stuff. If a lot of us had that, we would have so many fights on record at that point. But back then they didn't have like they have now, the Tapology, the sanctioned things. I mean, they were sanctioned events, but they was through like the organization, like ISKA, IKF, these kind of organizations. So we would fight, back then you were fighting 10, 15 pounds out, you could, I mean, and you carried a card and with your name on it, and after each fight you wrote down, they would write down your name, the result. So those things never carried over to like, so there's a lot of guys with a lot of fights that would be sanctioned through the commission now. Back then they didn't have the commission as big and strong as they do now. But yeah, on record, I guess, from when they came in, no, it doesn't show all that. But no, a lot of us guys were kickboxing. I mean, we was going to West Texas. We were fighting in Dallas. Steve Armstrong had those fights back in the day, and we would go to the plaza. So a lot of those old guys, and then came in. You got to realize too that I'm actually 45 years old. So I come from that time, the old school karate days and those things like that. And when they had the kickboxing fights, none of those went then before they did the where you can go on Tapology and Google. They didn't have those things back then. So a lot of guys had a lot of fights before they actually had them on what they call paper now.
How old were you when you walked away from being a competitor and you were just like, no, I'm just gonna coach from here on out? Like, how old were you?
So I was competing in the Taekwondo and karate circuit as a kid, all the way up until I was about continuous fighting, point kickboxing, all the way up until I was about 15. Then I stopped and got back in it when I was like 25. And I started competing again around that time when I was 25. I stopped my actual I won a world title in kickboxing, won the IKFs in 2008. I stopped fighting, and I think my last fight was a pro boxing fight in 2010. I was 34 years old when I stopped fighting. 34 was my last fight. 34 or 35, one of those two.
So not that long ago. 10 years ago, 11 years ago. Wasn't that long ago. One of the things, Coach D, I wanted to ask you about, you hit on a lot of really wild stuff. Like, it was kind of the Wild West back then. The growth of the sport, even from your last bout in 2010 to now, it is exploded in popularity. Mixed martial arts is like baseball now. It's like hockey. It's like football. It's like... It's covered on ESPN. Like, you can turn on your television and watch it. Whereas back in the day, you had to go to Blockbuster Video by where all the porn was and all the other hardcore stuff to get like those tapes that are like 4 hours long, right? Would you say like we're in a golden age of MMA? Like, for the kids that are coming up now, has there been a better time to get into the sport than today?
Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, people don't realize I started coaching MMA about 2006.
Right.
So I was taking guys to Louisiana to fight, when the commission wasn't really that strict. We was taking guys to Louisiana, amateur guys to Louisiana to fight. Back then, I was coaching boxing and mixed martial arts at the time. But it's exploded and changed so much. I mean, I wanted to fight a lot more. But once I started coaching, it started taking off. And I was like, wow. So I was trying to fight and coach, fight and coach, fight and coach, and it was just hard, because I was trying to basically give these people a chance a shot at their dreams. And that's what I started focusing on, was mainly coaching them, because I was coaching my ex-wife, and who got ranked in the top 10 United States women's boxing at the time. And I had a amateur boxing team, a pro boxing team, and an amateur MMA team. So it was just me, really.
Wow.
I didn't have no other coaches, so it was just me. So the game has changed a lot, and it's a lot easier now to get in the big stage than it was back then, because there's so many different avenues to get there with other organizations like LFA and all these Bellator and these other organizations that you can go, some of these local events, XKO, all these kind of places that you can go, that you get in the UFC now. Ultimate Fighter, you have the Tuesday, the series, the Contender Series. So many ways to get in the league now. So so the game has definitely evolved and changed.
I would also say it's a lot easier to get your name out there too because of social media,
Yeah,
YouTube,
exactly.
um, podcasts. Like there's all these different avenues that weren't
Yes.
available to guys when you were coming up. Like if
Nope.
you wanted to be interviewed, it's like, well, I hope the local news at 9 interviews me. Like that was it.
Yeah.
Like ESPN didn't cover you. Like
Yeah.
there wasn't any of that stuff. So I just feel like there are a lot more opportunities because of technology and because of the popularity of the sport.
Yeah.
The opportunities are out there. You just have to take advantage of them.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
it's really as simple as that. And I'm really curious to know. I want to talk about you, Coach, as like an entrepreneur. I know previously you've been involved with other gyms, and you've worked with a bunch of other people. How did the Lamb Striking Academy come to be? I know you're a self-made guy. I know you're not a guy that grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth, and you've had to probably hustle and make a lot of sacrifices. And I don't even know. I don't think I could even begin to fathom what you've had to sacrifice to make this gym a reality. Can you talk a little bit about how did your gym come about? Like what happened?
Um, I started it in 2011 with one of my students named Alex Madrid. He ended up becoming my friend. He was one of my fighters. He had got out the military, and he hit me up and said, "Coach, um, I want to open up a gym with you." And so we did. And we started a gym called Phalanx.
Mm-hmm.
Phalanx MMA is what it was. He was mainly the owner of it. I was a guy that was just the face of it,
Sure.
and I would, because I had the credentials and people, we wanted to use me to get people in the doors. Neither one of us really knew about how to run the gym and business like that at the time. So I just knew martial arts, I knew the art, but running a business is a whole different monster. And so we was open for a couple of years, and then he just couldn't keep it up no more, so he sold it to this guy. And then we stayed there coaching there, and then the guy ended up not wanting to do MMA no more. He wanted to do Krav Maga, so he moved the program out, but he ended up giving me the name Phalanx back. So we were trying to find a building, man. In the process, I was coaching at my cousin's gym while we were trying to find a place to go. And then me and my ex-wife, I had my ex-wife looking for buildings and things like that. And then we found the building I'm at now. And we found that building where I'm at now off of University. And like I said, I didn't have no money, um, didn't have nothing. I just had faith and a vision. And I was like, well, even though if I don't have no money, I'm still gonna go look for a building. Cause I'm like, I believe faith without works is dead. So everybody thought I was crazy. Like this guy's gonna look for a gym with no money. I had literally no money to my name. He paid me for the month that I had worked there, and I had fighters getting ready for fights. So it was a lot on my back trying to find this place. And I found it, a big 5,000 square foot building. I had the landlord look at it. I told her that I wanted it. Didn't know how I was going to get it. Just said I wanted it.
Right.
Uh, Prayed about it. Maybe a week later, some former students of mine from the other gym called me up. This lady and her husband was like, "Hey, Coach D, I heard you looking for a gym." And she was like, "Look, you treated my husband and I and my kids like family, and we love that, and we remember everything you did for us. So we want to help you get the gym. We don't have a lot of money, we don't have a lot, but we want to help you at least open it." So went to lunch with them, met with them. Um, they paid for the first month of rent. Uh, they paid for the down deposit. We bought some used mats, and then I had some things donated to me, some bags, stuff like that. Literally, that's how I opened up the gym. Didn't have no investors, didn't have no money, didn't have nothing, and I just did like a grand opening. So some of the students that was with me from the other gym showed up. People that had been wanting to train me. We did a grand opening. that's how we opened up the gym. I was like, look, I told my ex-wife at the time, I said, hey, our lease was up in an apartment. I said, we don't have, I said, let's just move in the gym right now.
Yeah.
Move in the gym, save money. So we moved in the gym in the back. Um, there was a bathroom, a shower. I said, shoot, let's move in here. You know, we had an office, so we moved in the gym to try to save money and all that stuff. And that was in 2013. That was in 2013. So we lived there for a few years while we was trying to build a gym. The problem was I didn't know business still.
Right.
So I was still trying to figure out how to run a gym, how to build. So we went through a lot of trial and error, you know. Really, my story is different than a lot of these guys. I didn't have the help. So I was struggling the whole time, you know, trying to keep it going and keep it up, man. And when I got divorced, I still stayed at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And then my son moved down here with me to live, and he lived there with me at the gym as well. And I was just trying to figure out, man, I was going around asking people for help, seeing if I can get people to invest, and nobody would bite. And so it was just, you know, it was just through the grace of God that the gym stayed open. And then finally, through the years, now I do have the right business partner, but it took my gym shutting down twice. I mean, I went through it all. I went through everything. Lost my car, eviction notice on my apartment, you know, nothing to eat. I went through that whole thing. And here I was, one of the top coaches around, going through those things. You know, fighters that I had put into the big show left. You know, a lot of those things happened. Guys left, people turned their back. And but I'm a solid dude, so I just stood my ground.
Was there ever a point in your life when you're going through all these, you're getting the pink slips in the mail, like, hey, yo, like, we're about to throw your ass out. Like, hey, like, you know, hey, we're about to repo your freaking car. Like, do you ever, like, sit back and, like, look back on that and you're like, man, like, I'm kind of, a lot of other people would have given up. They would have been like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to put on a suit and tie and get, like, a regular job now. It's like, did that ever like, float into your mind? Or is it just one of those things where it's like, no, like, this is part of the process, and
Yeah.
I'll overcome this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So the thing about pain and hurt, that's gonna come.
Right.
You know, I went through that. I went through the sitting at home, trying to figure out what was going on. But one thing I never thought about doing was quitting on myself. So that's one thing a lot of people, where I win in a lot of areas where people don't, is I was built with a very durable and strong mind and strong heart and strong spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So although I was going through the pain, although I was going through the hurt, I just knew not to give up on myself. I never knew how to do that. So even if I had a thought of giving up, my spirit wouldn't allow me to, because I was always so strong. Right. And even if I wanted to give up, I don't know how to give up. So it was like one of those things, like, keep it pushing, man. You know, I didn't know what to do, man. I honestly didn't know what to do, but I knew to stay solid and stand on my ground and pray. And at that time, my gym had shut down. So my gym shut down because I couldn't pay the rent and all that stuff at the gym. So the landlord locked the doors. Mm-hmm. But credit to her, all my equipment was still in there. Guys that I was training was going other places, and some guys opening up other gyms. It was a lot of that was going on. But the landlord was nice. She was like, look, I'm not going to put for lease sign out there. I'm going to give you time to get this thing figured out. And one of my students called me. He was like, Coach D, man, you know, well, backing up, what happened was, everybody was hitting me up from different gyms around, wanting me to come coach there. Mm-hmm. People from different states was like, man, come move out here. We'll take care of you. I had a lot of great offers, and I prayed about it. And I was like, man, all those offers sound good. And honestly, I needed the money at the time.
Sure.
But what I didn't want to do was making an impulsive decision off of a desperate moment.
Right.
Because I needed the money. So I do what I always do. I went into solitary confinement with myself, and I just prayed, and I asked God, I said, man, I hear all these offers, but I'm saying like, what do you want me to do? I'm listening to my conscience. And it was like, nah, you got to sit here, stick it out, and it's going to work out. Maybe a week later, one of my students, fighters, called. He was like, Coach D, my cousin know this guy that's looking into getting opening gyms and stuff like that. Maybe want to talk to him. So I get a hold of this guy. We meet up. He's like, look, maybe we can get the gym back open. Let's try this thing out for 6 months, this partnership. If it doesn't work in 6 months, we'll go our separate ways. So he gave me the money to pay the back rent to the gym, open up the gym. We caught up the electric bill, stuff like that. The problem was we still didn't have structure.
Right.
See, so we opened up the gym back, we still have structure. But I knew that he was only to be there for temporary to get the gym back open.
Mm-hmm.
And the gym got rolling back open. We're still trying to figure out what to do. Ran into this guy, came into my gym one day. He was actually looking for my old business partner.
Mm-hmm.
But then me and him started talking. Then we went and had Starbucks the next day. And he started talking, said, man, I want to help you. I know a guy that runs gyms and stuff like that. Let's see if we can get some advice from him. And so we linked up with this new guy that's now my business partner now, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. We linked up. He came in. He's like, man, you have a brand, you have a product. Let's see what we can do. And then we linked up with them, and it's been, going good, going up since. So it's been a lot, man. It's been a lot. It's just sticking through the storm. That's what I knew how to do.
I think that in and of itself is a seminar worth listening to, because just overcoming the trials and tribulations of being an entrepreneur, like, it's not the same thing as being an athlete. It's not the same thing as being a coach. Like, it's a completely different ball game. And I think you're hitting on things that I think a lot of other fighters like don't really think about, because this is something I hear all the time. Like, oh yeah, I'll fight for 10 years and I'm going to open up my own gym. And I always sit back and I kind of smile a little bit, and I never really say anything, because I don't want to like be that guy. I don't want to like discourage anybody from doing anything that they're passionate about. But I also sit back and I'm like, not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Like, some people can do it. Some people have a natural ability to do that. Others don't. It's just like fighting competitively. Like, I could fight to get in shape. Sure. Like, non-competitive. Yeah, I could go to your gym, get in shape, hit the pads with you. That would be the extent that it would go. I am not Kevin Fernandez. I am not going into the UFC. I'm not like all these other ballers that are in your gym that are like these like brown belts and guys that are just going to go to Bellator and whatever. Like, that's not me. And I want to say that to fighters, like, hey, listen, that's great that you are in the UFC or in Bellator or whatever, but like, just because you're a successful fighter, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a successful coach or a successful entrepreneur. They're very different. Yeah. They're very different things.
Two different monsters, man.
True different monsters indeed. And just so like you highlighting the difficulties that you've had to overcome and the persistence, like, it's a grind, it's a marathon, and there are going to be ups and downs about owning your own business, like, and that's just something you have to think about. There's another aspect of your life that I want to hit on, and that's you're a special man, and like you the theme that I get from you, that I extract from you in our conversation, is giving back to others, to your community. You've hit on like your relationships with your students, how you opened the gym. It was a community effort, really. Everyone kind of pitched in to make it happen. And you're giving back to your community all the time. And I know that you had like you went to a school, or maybe it was a bunch of school kids that came to your gym and you were talking about anti-bullying. You had like a seminar on that. So, Coach, I want to ask you a little bit about you as like a human being, you as like a philanthropist, giving back. Like, what are you doing? Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's a calling, right? So it is important to me, but I listen to my calling. I listen to what I'm supposed to do. So a lot of people be trying to do things that they want to do. They think that I try to listen to the things that I'm meant to do and supposed to do. And that's one of my callings, is to help younger people or help people um, um, reach their goals and their spiritual goals and their lifely goals. And because I understand that there's a lot of people that have nobody to help them or teach them right. And I see a lot of these young kids, and a lot of them I see myself in, and a lot of people I see that didn't have no direction or that are going the wrong way. And it breaks my heart to see people going the wrong way and they don't have no direction, they don't have nobody helping them. So I see that, and like people like draw to me a lot, and I see that. So I use that as an advantage to bring them in and help them in the right way. When I see, like Whitney Houston said in a song, she goes that our children are our future, and they really are. And this is why we have a lot of kids and a lot of people doing the things that they do now, because they had reckless childhoods,
Right.
parents that didn't care, parents that didn't teach and didn't talk to them. And so that's why the world that it is today. Now, although I cannot change the world, I do know that I have assignments, and I am attached to those assignments to help the people that need to be helped, and maybe that they not make some of the same mistakes that I made, or not lead down the path of death or penitentiary or destruction or home or being homeless or being broke and not having nothing. And I'm big on wanting to help people that I'm that I care about, and people that I'm assigned to help, that they don't go through those same things. And it means a lot because I have a heart for people. So I have a heart for mankind, for humanity, and I am attached to the spirit of what we call love. And so that's why I like helping people, because it's in me. It's not on me, but it's in me. And it's the way that God created me. So I have to do the things that God created me to do, um, for Him and for the people. Because when you are, in my spiritual belief, when you how you give back to God is by giving back through His people. And I love seeing people successful. I love see people smile. I love see people accomplish their goals. And I like seeing people do good. I like seeing people not stressed out, because this is a stressful world that we live in, with the things that are going on. It's a very evil and demonic and hateful world. And so I want to see people thrive in this in these hardships that we in, because I know what it felt like to me. I want to help people because I know what it felt like to cry, to be hungry, to have people turn their back on you for no reason, to lose everything, to not have no direction, to not to be out there lost in this world. And it's a very stressful and disheartening place to be. So I don't like seeing people like that. And so that's why I am committed to helping people, whether it's committed through using martial arts to help them get their spiritual life together, or public speaking, or implementing things in these schools to help these kids. However it take, whatever it takes to help people, that's what I'm going to do.
It's brave and difficult. It's harder than hell to be optimistic or positive. It's hard. Like, it's not easy to like have that sort of like constructive thoughts in your head. It's very easy to have destructive thoughts in your head. It's
Yeah,
very easy to get wrapped up in the toxicity of this world. So I always like, and I'm mindful of that. I think like by nature, I don't like, this is kind of like an embarrassing thing to say about myself, but I think I'm kind of like a pessimist by nature, and maybe even too much of a realist. When like instinctually, anytime somebody's nice to me, I'm like, what do they want from me? Like, there's an angle here. What is it that they're trying to get pull over on me that I don't know about? Like, I have like my guard up. That's just how I'm wired. And sometimes I wish I wasn't like that. Like, sometimes I wish it's like, okay, how can I be more accepting? How can I be different? How can I rewire things? Because it's possible. Like, we all
yeah,
are pre-wired a certain way, but you can change that. You just have to work at it. And that's one of the things that I've really have been mindful about, and that's one of the things that helps me in doing this show is like I get all these different perspectives, I get all these different life stories, and there's certain things I think that if you listen, if you stop doing this and if you do this and listen, the information's there for you. It's just a
Yeah,
matter of like, do you have the discipline and do you have the ability to shut off your ego for a second and just listen? And if you
right.
can do that and take it a step further and actually apply it, who knows what could happen? All kinds of
That's
great
right.
positive things can happen. But it
Yeah,
starts with you.
it does start with you.
It starts with you, and you have to be willing to take that first step, get out of your comfort zone. Coach G, you're just an incredible guy. I just like this was an amazing opportunity for me. I thank you for your time. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you: you're a man of many hats, a man of many talents. You got all kinds of things going on behind the scenes. What are some other things you got going on that you would like people to know about?
Well, it's just more like really is I'm wanting to get my podcast back going. I started a couple of years ago. I want to write a few more books and keep implementing these life empowerment programs in these schools. I talked to the principal of Leonard Middle School and Morningside Middle School, which is two of the worst middle schools in the state or the nation. So we're talking about me coming in and teaching some life empowerment programs there and getting these kids ready for real life. It's one thing to teach kids the stuff in school, but I think they miss so much by teaching them book stuff and the stuff that a lot of stuff they're not going to use. They need life lessons, they need life things. So that's the thing, man, is I want to get my gym going more and I'm there less so I can continue to do public speaking and motivational speaking and um, things like that. Right now, we're doing our Tuesday night fights that are at the yard on 7th Street, second Tuesday every month. Now we just booked the Club Vivo in Dallas. That's another opportunity, man, to bring people together, fellowship, have a good time. People think it's just about fighting. It's exhibition fights for fighters that might want to fight one day.
Mm-hmm.
People that want to just get something off their bucket list, get some stress off there, somebody that might want to fight. So we have this thing set up for that thing and having people to come together. You know, with all this stuff in this world, you see people arguing and fighting on Facebook about politics, race, sexual orientation, religion, all that stuff that I'm not interested in ever debating and arguing with people about. But I
Right.
noticed that when we do these Tuesday night fights, you have all these people from all different walks of life, whether they're from the hood, from the suburbs, military, police, whatever, country people, whatever. One thing I noticed in those events, that everybody is smiling, everybody's laughing, everybody's getting along, everybody's dancing, and everybody's mingling from all walks of life. And then nobody talking about race, and nobody talking about politics, presidents, none of that. And so it shows you that when you take away the BS stuff from the world of social media and politics, how people really can get along. And that's the main thing is that I'm doing is bringing people together. And that's what people don't see. It's a plan. It's bringing people together and everybody getting along. And so that's one of the things I want to continue to do is bring people together, you know, uh, get that word and that spoken word out, public speaking and motivational speaking, and talk to people about life, what's going on in this world and life, and that you can have a great life and you don't have to pay attention to the nonsense in this world. That's my main goal, man, is just to keep bringing people together, unifying people, and to keep fulfilling who I believe to be God and my spiritual father purpose for my life. That's it.
Isn't it amazing how much we all have in common as human beings when you take this away?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when you're not talking shit and you set this aside for a minute and it's just amazing like
Right.
what can come out of that. But you have to
Absolutely.
be willing to do it. Like it's so easy to just like,
Right.
I'm mad today and I'm going to let you all know about it by using this.
Don't
And
solve nothing.
it doesn't solve anything. It just
Yeah.
puts people in a bitter, angry, all this is really a socially acceptable way to get a little cocaine hit. Like,
Right.
I'm feeling like shit, I'm not feeling good, so I'm gonna go in here and talk a bunch of shit to make
But
myself
it does,
feel better. But it doesn't
but it
last,
don't do nothing.
right? Like,
Anything that you say or do, I tell people this all the time. If what you say and what you do is not productive, then it's counterproductive.
right,
If the things that you say and the things you do is not helping you or helping somebody else or elevating your life, elevating you, then you got to ask yourself, why do it? Because all you're doing is putting more stress on yourself. So anything that you can't change, why try to force it? Worry
right.
about the stuff you can change, and that's it.
That's it. That's it. Perfect. I can't think of a better way to close. You need to come back because I feel like I could talk to you for like 10 more episodes. That's how much content. That's how much wisdom that you have.
Yeah.
Um, all your contact information for your gym, all that stuff is going to be in the description for the video. Please, if you are in the Dallas Fort Worth area, the information for Coach D's gym is also going to be in the description, as well as his own personal Instagram. So please, if you are interested in hitting the mitts or getting in shape, mixed martial arts, boxing, kickboxing, whatever, hit up Coach D. There's no other place that you should be going to if you're in Dallas Fort Worth.